How about now? Yeah, there we go. Ah! Turns out my microphone, number one, wasn't fully plugged into the plug. Number two, I then had to reset it on the program, too. Anyway, like I was trying to say, we have a new patron sculpt today, as would be obvious, because it's midday on Sunday. And I was also going over what I plan on doing over the next few weeks in the weekdays. And what that is my gaming group just started to doing the Dragon Heist Waterdeep this past Wednesday. And we're going in straight from there, same characters, into Dungeon of the Mad Mage, or whatever they're calling it. And I'm going to, for the next couple weeks, I'm going to be making the players in my, or characters in my campaign on Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, you are C. Powell. You're the patron today, aren't you? Okay, we're going to need to know what you want me to sculpt. I will say that the single biggest thing that's a no-go is copyrighted things. I'm not going to sculpt... And hello, Kim. I'm not going to sculpt things like Space Marines or Eldar. Another big thing that I probably can't do more than won't do is non-humanoids. There's just no way to do it within the time frame of the show. And finally, exact likenesses is kind of a bit much for a 2-hour show. Other than that, is there anything you want? It could be a troll. It could be a shaman. It could be almost, whatever you want to. If you go back and look at the previous things I've done, you can see that there's a pretty wide range. It could be science fiction. It could be fantasy. It could be, just not specific science fiction. No Han Solos. Of course, I'm the guy that in a D&D campaign once made an 18-year-old version of Larry the Cable Guy as a barbarian from a polar tribe.
Yep, that's what he's doing. He's a barbarian. Hat's made of seal leather. It says Coors. Because he's actually originally from Earth. Got stuck up there. Mm-hmm. Yonty. He darn well taught them how to make flannel. Get her done. I don't care who you are. That's funny right there.
But yeah, 18-year-old kid in the fantasy world, that barbarian class, and that sounded like Larry the Cable Guy. Same campaign had a rather not that bright player. He sees two warriors fighting with the rest of their respective squads. Yes. With the rest of their respective squads dead. One is wearing gold armor with a silver crown and bright shining shield with a cross on the front. And the other is wearing black spiky armor with a dragon-shaped head. Guess who he decided to help because he couldn't tell who was who and flipped a coin. No biting the microphone. No biting the microphone. A troll-like monster with tentacles for hands. That's going to be adding on. Okay, I guess we could, but the further away from basic humanoid shape it is, the more difficult it's going to be to get it done within a 2-hour time frame. Oh, look at this. I gotta put you down, little buddy. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like, technically, the king in yellow looks humanoid from a distance. But he's anything but. Yeah, so the tentacles for hands would be a bit reaching. You know? It's the less human-like it is, the harder it is to get it done. Number one, within the time frame of this video, and number two, without having to do a whole lot of extra geometry. So, yeah. So, you know, I've already got a base troll shape, but the whole tentacles for hands, that would start reaching a bit into the realm of having to do a lot more base geometry on the sculpt. So, it's not the troll part that's the problem, it's the tentacles part that's the problem. Okay. A big chunky bard. Like muscular chunky or overweight chunky. Also, what kind of clothing? What kind of hair? What race? Is he carrying a weapon in one hand and a instrument in the other? Is he only carrying an instrument? Is it a horn? Is it a harp? A lute? You know. Are we talking like Renaissance? Are we talking like Old Norse skald? There's still a wide range we can work with here. Is he rich and therefore has really nice clothing, or is he like, you know, standing on the street playing for quarters? Human bard, wealthy Renaissance style, holding a lute with both hands. Okay, do you mean getting ready to swing it like El Kabong, or playing it? Or is he pulling a, you know, the Who? And, okay, and what kind of hair? That's the last thing I need to know. What kind of hair? Meanwhile, while you're deciding on the hair, I can go ahead and swap out to Dad's Studio. And I will be showing you a way to create a morph, because it's an appropriate thing to do right now. No. There we go. This is just one way to create a morph. Okay, so he's got the Picard ruff, like Jean-Luc Picard. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, we select the figure. We're then going up to Create and down to New Deformer. We're going to call it Tubby. This is going to make just a basic general tubby belly, just to give us some geometry to work with. Shrink this down to cover mostly just the stomach. You'll notice that with the tubby field selected, you can see the vertexes in shades of yellow and red, where yellow is not affected very much, red is the center of effect, and orange is in between. The tubby base is the center of where this is going to work. We're going to bring it up just a little bit, and then we're going to select the tubby itself. We're going to start off with some Z-scale. And you can see it's morphing the shape. And then some X scale, because we want him kind of stout. We're going to work from this. Okay, we're going to make the Z scale a little bit bigger. And then we're going to Z translate it forward. Well, not that far forward. Just to make sure that we have more of a tubby belly. And then Z scale it some more. Then we're going to take the field, we're going to see what happens if we make it smaller. Well, we're going to add more belly. I scale it. You see what I'm saying? What this does, this basically grabs sections of the mesh and makes it bigger, or makes it smaller, or makes it whatever that you want it to be. Okay. And all this is for us to have a little bit more geo and a little bit more idea on what he looks like. So now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to him, edit, figure. Where is it? Geometry. Where is it? Alright, where the heck did it go? That's not working. Yeah, don't you like it when we don't want... Yeah. Tell you what, give me just a second here. I've got to double check on something. I may not be able to do this. I may not be able to create a morph from the from this in the current current. That gives us more of a tub, and we then go on and adjust. You see what I'm saying? I may not be able to do this. It may not work. Okay. I see how to do it. Alright, let me go back here. Add pane. Deform. Yay! Oh, I see. I click him. Spawn morph. Unique name. Tubby. Yeah, so now I go ahead and I delete that. I go back to him and I set Tubby to 100%. There we go. We now have a Tubby base to work from. We're going to do more, but we just wanted to make sure we had some extra hip and belly for when we're posing. Now we go back to Content Library. One of the first things we're going to need to do, I'm going to assume since he's playing it, he's holding the lute with his left hand on the neck. So over here we have lute left hand right here. Well, my head's probably blocking it, but bing. He has a lute in his left hand now. Now, the next thing is we're going to make the character, we're going to set the pose. First we're going to go side to side with this hip. Bend it forward a little. Side to side here and forward. Alright, I went forward 10, so we're going to come this -10. Well, need to go a little bit more than that. There. -15. Going to front view. And what we're going to do first is we're going to select this foot. And we're going to side to side it. And then we're going to take this leg. We're also going to go side to side, but we're going to bend the foot so that the toe is on the ground. So that he's in a rather performing pose. Control D to drop to the ground and raise him up. We're going to side to side this way and twist it. And we're going to side to side the other way. Twist it also and bend back a bit. I'm not going to twist it that much, it's a bit too much. Now we're going to twist the shoulder and lift it up a bit. That's a bit too much twist. Okay. And now we gotta kind of bring it a little bit close to the belly so that the other hand can play. So we're gonna bring it to about there. And then we're gonna bend this forearm. We're going to, let's go ahead and turn on this, it'll be a little bit easier. So we can see the three axes. So blue will make it go kind of up and down a little. Red will twist it. And green will bring it forward and back. Okay, we need to bring it back and then bend the forearm a bit. Now we just play around with the fingers until it looks like he's actually playing. Okay, it looks like he's actually playing just that little bit. So we're going to unbend the arm just a little. And with the shoulder selected, twist it just a little until it's touching. Let's make that 25 even. And then we're just going to start lowering it just by ones until it's there. And now we're going to twist the head and neck at the same time. The neck will also go side to side that way. The head will bend back a little. And now we're going to close in because now we're going to play around with some expression bits. So we're going to open up the mouth a bit more to represent him singing. Z-rotate like that, and X-rotate up. And now we're going to symmetry it. Symmetry, right to left. Accept. And now when we zoom out, we have our chunky bard bass pose playing his lute. One thing we need to do, we need to select the there, we need to bend the abdomen back a little just to give him more of a, yeah. So how is this looking for the pose? And Kim, yes you could, but it would actually be easier to make the morph in ZBrush. This was just a quick wump to get a general torso sized. Okay. Now one thing I've noticed is that the fingers are going through the lute. So we've got to undo that. That's not good. There we go. We don't want the fingers going through the lute. And then we still have the tips going through, so there. Now, I'm gonna run some questions by you, and you might look at me and go, "Bah." You might not. Is he wearing breeches or a hose? Is he wearing a tunic or a doublet? And does he have a cloak? Breeches, tunic, and cloak. So he's early Renaissance. He's like late 1400s instead of late 1500s. Like 1480. And I'm assuming he's going to have a brooch on his cloak of some kind. Okay. That is, by the way, something that will help sculpting miniatures a lot, is becoming familiar with the general styles of clothing from the different medieval eras. Final question. Boots, cuffed or not? Cuffed. Okay. I asked that because one of the things that I have made, in fact, is a set of pieces to go on the calves that make them look like they're wearing, like he's wearing cuffed boots already. Okay. Now, I'm going to hide the lute and the boot cuffs. Now, since he's wearing a tunic, we also need to add tunic skirt. And that's a problem. Yeah, that's what I thought. I forgot to do something on jointed mail. I have to go up here to parameters, go back to morphs and turn them to a tubby of 0. And then I have to go up here to where it says parameter settings. Auto follow. Now watch what happens when I type in 100% on tubby. Didn't work. Delete it. Select him and tunic skirt. Oh, this time it followed him. This time it followed the morph. That's good. Okay, we're going to hide it though, because we want just the body for this part. Actually, while we're here, let's ask, what kind of what kind of base do you want? The best way to show you is to come back up here and click this button. I would suggest either the cobblestones or the wood planks, because he could be playing out on the street or on a stage. He could be playing on board ship or in a bar, you know, that sort of thing. So that's two most likely places. So one of these, you know, the wood planks. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and place his base on him. File, import, bases. Base planks. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we've got to lower it, because that's a bit high. Y translate down, X translate over, and then we're going to Y rotate kind of randomly. Because the more random the apparent positioning of the planks, the more natural it looks. Then we're going to Z translate it forward. And then we got to come up here to the front view and we're going to have to raise it up until the feet kind of blend in. So that's a bit too much, so negative 3.65. There we go. And there is him with his base. So we're going to hide the base for a second. Now we're going to export. Export broadcast miniatures. Actually, no, this is not broadcast miniatures. This is Patreon minis. New. What are we going to call our bard? Hello, Wildiba Builds. We are in the middle of sculpting a bard. And it's for C. Powell 83 here, so what do we want to name him? Do we want to just call him Tubby Bard? Tubby Bard. Okay. Tubby Bard Bod. And export. Then we're going to hide him and make the loot visible. File, export, Tubby Bard loot. This is so that it's easier to sculpt on these individual pieces of geometry. File, export, Tubby Bard boot cuff. Hide visible. File, export, Tubby Bard tunic base. And then finally, file, export, Tubby Bard base. Accept. And we then kick on over to ZBrush. We're going to import from Patreon new Tubby Bard Bod. Then we click and drag down the screen. Oh no, I just noticed it's missing part of the screen, which means I need to kind of shrink it down a bit, bring it back up to the top corner. Then I can fill it in. Anyway, now I hit edit. Now that it's edited, I can maneuver it around. We go to Subtool, and we're going to append all the other parts, with the very first one being the bottom of the skirt, or kilt, tunic. Then the next one being the boot cuffs. Then the loot. And the last one being the base. This is how it will look before we act. This is your raw geometry for Tubby the Bard. Okay, one of the next things we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and hide the loot and the base and the things. We're going to give the skirt one level of subdivision so that it's got roughly the same polygon distribution as Tubby himself. But now we're going to work on Tubby here. What we're going to do, because he's going to be wearing a tunic, I'm going to smooth out the chest area because it's going to be underneath. I'm not going to start tubbying him up elsewhere until after I have the tunic skirt on, because we need it all together. Now, before we make it any higher polygon, I also have to go in, shrink the mouse, and let's bring this up, and smooth out the inner mouth, bringing it forward so it's not as much of a pain to print. Frame. Now, we are going to go ahead and merge down And then we're going to start subdividing until it's around, yeah, 1.6 million. Delete lower, Dynamesh 768, and a blur of 0. The reason for this is this makes it easier for sculpting. And now we go over the edge, and oh look, it's now part of it. We also need to kind of go over where the belly is because he's got too much of a six-pack. And over here we get rid of this. We're now going to smooth over the entire buttock area because, again, he's wearing a tunic, not... Yeah, there we go. Frame out. Now the next step is we need to make him a little bit tubbier in every respect. So we're going to use the move tool for this. It's going to sound weird, but we are. Make it a little bit bigger. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the thigh, the outer thigh, and pull out a bit. And here. We're then going to inflate, reduce the intensity just a little, reduce the size, and we're going to inflate the calf and the lower leg. Actually, that's a bit too much, because we need to go ahead and have our yeah, we need to have the boot cuffs kind of merged in, so we're going to merge down, and now we're going to have to do it another way because that'll cause the boot cuffs to lose their detail. So we're going to standard auto masking and back face mask. This will make anything on the back of what we're doing not show up. We go to stroke. I said we go to stroke, and we turn off lazy mouse, and we bring the intensity down to about 7. Yeah. Now we're going to break out the tablet. Yay! And here on the tablet, we're going to go ahead and just start very gently pulling out everything about the lower leg here, and then the sides of it. And that's going to just being very careful and very gentle with it, just slow, just a little bit here and there. And we'll end up with something that will look a bit more chubby in the legs. Then we come along to the back, and we're going to pull out the back a little. Just the back of the calves. And now the legs look like they fit a little bit better, don't they? Well, let's move the front of this just a little bit more. And a little bit more here. There we go. Now we're going to do the same thing down here. We're going to shrink it a little bit. And a little bit of smoothing right here in the underarm area. And the same thing applies over here. We're going to smooth that out a bit. And then I'm going to pull out the arm just to make it a little bit thicker. We're just gonna ease it out. And then we're gonna ease out the belly a little. But one thing we're gonna do after we do the belly is we're going to smooth it. You go over with the smooth brush, and then I'm going to tap 1 a couple times, because that'll smooth it out quite a bit more. And here we have a somewhat overweight, well, let's smooth out the back of the butt. A somewhat overweight bard. Next thing we need to do is we need to do that to the head. So we need to shrink the mouse and then just kind of give him a little bit of chubby on the cheeks, under the neck, and on the other cheek. We want him to look more like Brando than Weird Al. So, unless you're talking about Weird Al from a certain video from the late 80s. You know, the sequel to Eat It. There we go. And our basic shape for our tubby guy is ready. Okay. Now I just realized we forgot something. You had said he has a cloak. So I'm going to have to come into here into Content Library and add in a cloak. Fit cloak to jointed base mail. Accept. And then center cloak 1 is going to bend out a bit, just because he kind of needs to. But it's also going to zero-tape that way. Center cloak 2 is going to zero-tape the same way and bend in. What that does is that enables that corner of the cloak to actually be on the ground. It still keeps the flow and the lines proper, but now he's got a nice flowy cloak, and we're gonna worry about the overall shape when we get ready to sculpt on it. So, with the cloak being the only thing visible, let's go ahead and export this as Tubby Bard Cloak. That's why I always keep this screen open with all of the parts ready and waiting in case I realize, oh, I forgot something, I can add it back in. So, let's go ahead while we're here and append Polymesh 3D, import Tubby Bard Cloak. Whoops, so Nike. There we go. That, we need to make sure they have that selected. Import Tubby Bard Cloak. And then we're going to use down over here, this arrow moves it up in order. Like I said, we're going to worry about that later, after we've done almost everything else. Okay. So now, does he have short sleeve or long sleeve tunic? And is it, if it's long sleeve, is it close to the forearm, or is it more of a houppelande with the long dangly? Long sleeve close to the forearm. Alright. So, is he going to have cuffs or just straight tunic? We're going to go ahead right now and make the neck for the tunic. He's going to have... Oh, I forgot to tighten the focal length, or focal shift. Going to have a moderately close neck piece. And then we're just going to kind of pull out just and down just a little, because this is going to blend in to the body. The bottom end is going to blend into the body. And once we've done this, we go down to extract. Double-sided, 0.22, that's all's pretty good. So we click extract, accept, we draw to unmask that, we go back to the body, draw to unmask it, and then back down to the mantle area. We're gonna Dynamesh it to 128. Then make the mouse a little bit bigger and smooth it just a bit. And what this does is this brings it closer to the skin, which means it'll be easier when we go to blend it in, which we'll also do at the same time as we do the subdivide it a couple times. 142 points should be good. 142,000 points should be good, I meant to say. Alright, frame out. Just straight tunic, no cuffs. Okay. So then what we're going to do now is we're going to hide the chest and the belly, because there we go. We're gonna, by Control Shift Click, we're hiding these parts. The reason we're doing this is so that we can come in, and I'm just going to select the forearm with this click and drag. I won't have to draw on an interesting shape. So click and drag. We're going to do the same thing here, just to make sure we've got what we need. Enough room. And then Control Shift to make sure I didn't accidentally get anything down there. Control Alt. Control Shift, click in the middle, and he comes back. And I can see I've already got one small thing that I did that I shouldn't have done. Shrink this, Control Alt, and I can erase that little bit. Now I'm going to extract it the same way I did the neck piece. Accept, draw, click on the body, draw, shrink, geometry, Dynamesh. And then we're going to make the mouse larger, and we're going to gently, very lightly with the mouse, shift click so that we can smooth out the areas we're passing over. And then we come over to the other side and do the same thing. Then we're going to shrink the mouse a bit, and we're going to go over the kind of the middle. Just to kind of make sure we don't have this weird arc. And the same thing right about here. And now we're going to subdivide those a bit. We're also going to make the neck visible. Geometry, we're going to divide it until it's about there. Yeah, delete lower. And now we're going to merge down with these pieces. Geometry, Dynamesh. Now we go in and shift so that we can smooth out where the neck meets the chest, and pressing 1 a couple times until it smooths out nice and smooth. Do the same thing up here. And then come on over here. And as you can see, it's working really nicely. Then we go ahead and do the same thing to the inner forearms. Just to give us a nice even seam. Okay, and then finally this forearm. Next question is belt. What style of belt does he have? Does he have the ring belt? Does he have a wide leather belt? Does he have a narrow leather belt? He obviously doesn't have a rope belt because you said he was rich. Okay. Frame out. Ring belt. Okay. And see, every so often I take a step back. I think I need to smooth right in here a little bit. It's still got too much of a form fittingness. There we go. And the same thing goes right in here. It's a bit too form-fitting on the on the underarm there. There we go. And maybe a little bit too much on the outside of the forearm. You hit 1 to repeat it. Okay. There we go. Now, just every so often, a good thing to do is shrink back, zoom out until the figure is about 1 to 2 inches high. And then look to see if any of the details are visible easily on your screen. If they are not visible, like right here, we can kind of see the fingers, we can see the face and the eyes and the ears. If they weren't visible, then when we actually printed this out as a tabletop miniature, ding ding, the details wouldn't be visible or they'd be too small to paint. You see, you can make something unimaginably detailed that can just barely get printed out. But if it can't be painted, or if the details are so small they're smaller than the grain of the paint, they're useless. You need to make sure that your details are exaggerated enough. Okay? Okay, so with the ring belt. Ring belts usually have their buckle just off center to the left or to the right. Where do you want it? To the left or to the right? And then it has the bit dangling down because it's I'm gonna have to do this. The way a ring belt is put on. First of all, assume that this is a ring and not a rectangle. You slide your belt in, down, and through. That's what a ring, assuming that this is a ring and that it's actually a bit tighter than what I'm showing. That is how you do a ring belt. And they have this hanging down to one side or the other. To the left. Okay, so over here. Alright, the way we're going to do this is a ring belt would be about the same width as this on a real person, which means we need to make it about double that to really look right on this guy. Oh, come on, don't do that. Yeah. So we're going to make it a little bit bigger, yeah, about there. And I'm going to draw on. That's too big. Come up from high and come down low. And come back around. Now let's bring this up a little. And bring it around like that. Now I need to make sure I get kind of straighten up that line and clean up the bottom here. That is our base belt. Actually, no, it's not. That's going way too far down. We're going to start it going only that far down. And then coming back up again on the side here. Whoop. Okay, there we go. That's better. Now as a subtool, we extract it at 0.03. Accept. And we draw and draw. We now geometry 256 Dynamesh it. Yay! I'm going to subdivide it a couple times. Delete lower. Now, subtool, append ring 3D. And we're going to push it up. This is going to be the ring for our belt. And so one thing we need to do, we go down here from geometry to, deformation. We shrink its size. Until, let's offset it X off that way. We want it about that big. So now we're going to rotate along the Z. Then we're going to offset it again and offset it by Y. We're going to now bend it, whoops, not bend it, rotate it a little bit more like that. And from here, I'm going to make the mouse, oh, let's say 999 or 998. And we're going to move. And move it down to here. A little bit more of that. Okay. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to size it again a little bit. Yeah. Okay, that is going to be our buckle, effectively. We'll go ahead and close the formation, go back to subtool, change the mouse back to a more reasonable size. And this time we're going to select the parts of the knot. So we know that it's going to come out from that ring. It's going to come out down below. Come up from behind and go inside the part coming over down below. So we're going to take the, not that, that. We're going to take the belt. I'm going to shrink this down a bit. And we're going to select like there. Okay. And then we're going to select that. Deselect what I accidentally put on the back side. We're going to hide the body, just make this a little bit easier. We're going to come back. We're going to, well, actually, we need to make sure that we have back face mask on. We're going to come back up from the back side. This is just to keep our okay. That's just to keep our position, make sure that we are where we need to be. And we're going to come back here and do okay, now we're going to extract it at 0.03 or 0.02. Deselect. Deselect. Now we're going to Dynamesh this at 256. And smooth where it is here. And then with the move tool selected. It is selected. Oh, yeah. Make it bigger. We're gonna, or somewhat bigger. We're gonna grab and pull out here. And here, and in here. And this goes out that way. Okay, now shrink this and smooth that out of the existence. With a little bit of subdivision, and we're good there. Now what comes next is actually going to come off of Tubby himself, because it's going to include a long, well, not long, but yeah, it's gonna include a bit of a okay, so we come this way and then erase that. No, erase too high. And this is going to be extracted at 0.04. Extract, accept. Draw. Select him and draw. And now we subdivide it, or not subdivide, we dynamesh it at 256. And then before we subdivide it, we shrink this down again and smooth the top corner here, because it's supposed to be coming from around there. With that engaged, we're going to grab and pull up, and here and pull up, and then we're going to grab the whole thing here and pull over. And when we turn off the transparency and we look at it to see, that is pretty much what a ring belt looks like, except for what we need to do now. We go down to, not that, no. That? Yeah, that. Hide the... I'm going to grab this and drag it down to there. And shrinking the mouse a little, bring it and merge it in. Okay, there we go. That looks like it's tied around the ring, doesn't it? I have to say, my first printer was by a company called G-Tech. Geetech. Yes, Geetech. And it was horrible. It was completely and utterly horrible. And I would never recommend G-Tech for anyone. Undo that. Needs to be closer to 512, because we want to keep... Oh, 512, not 40 and 96. Yeah, because we want to keep that. So we shrink this a bit, and we're going to smooth where it meets. And we're going to come down here and shrink it even more. I'm going to smooth down here. And now, when we make the ring visible, yep, the belt is good. We're going to subdivide the belt a little bit, or not the belt, the buckle ring. And now we're going to subdivide the belt. Until it's, yeah, that's good enough. We only needed one. So our basic geometry has everything that it needs present except for the hair. All we need to do now is give him, for base geometry, well, one thing I've got to do is because it'd be driving me crazy otherwise. We need to select our tubby bard. And we need to give him his hair. Then it'll be time to start adding details. Whether it's adding knuckles to the hands or wrinkles to the clothing. So now let's shrink this. Now you said he had a card ruff, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him kind of a that. Let's undo over the ear because we want the ear to be plain and available. Okay. Just a little bit of there. Down to the bottom. Because the bottom of the head is where the bottom of most people's hairline is. We're going to kind of come around like this. So here is his hairline. We're going to extract it at 0.02. Extract, accept, draw to deselect it, and then draw to deselect there. Now we're going to dynamesh it at 128, and then just start subdividing it once so that we can come over top of the hairline and get our basic shape here. Twice to smooth that, well, to smooth that out. And then a couple more times so that we can start drawing on the details. Now we're going to use move, kind of small, to pull down the bottom of that. And then we're going to smooth it out here. And then tap 1, 2. Okay. Now, we're going to draw in the individual. We're going to use the slash tool, making sure that we have lazy mouse turned off, and it's not too deep, about a 12. We're going to draw in your basic locks, which for him is not so much locks as latches, you know, making jokes. We're going to make the bottom ones distinct from the top ones. Oh. because this guy is old. Well, not old, but he's middle-aged, and he would get angry if you called him old. Yeah, you figure he's probably in his late 60s or more. Let's make him make this a little bit bigger and a little bit deeper, so I don't have to cut in as often. Okay. Then we're just going to kind of bring in just some bits from the top. And now we're going to add, and we're going to reduce this a lot. And we're going to draw in the tops of these locks, because the sharper they are, the easier it'll be to paint. Just remember, we're not so much worried about making it look like an actual person as much as we are wanting to make it easy to paint. Easy to read across a tabletop. And fun for the person printing and or painting it to mess around with. So by making it more exaggerated, it'll be easier on them. Now remember what I said about zooming out until it's only a couple inches tall on the screen? You can see that the hair is pretty much, if I do much more to the hair, it's not going to be as visible when I actually go to print it. There's really not much more I have to do to the hair. So about the only thing left to do now is to put the wrinkles into the clothing and the knuckles onto the hands. Frame it again. And one thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to select our body. We're going to hide the rest of it except for the belt, so that we can sculpt on the wrinkles that are needed on the majority of the clothing. And we're going to give it a level of subdivision. Okay, now, before we do anything to the calves, you said breeches and not hose. Am I correct? You said breeches, correct? Slightly baggy, with wrinklies, as opposed to body hugging. Okay, and by the way, good game hunters, I'm 48, and I'm 1 month away from turning 49. So, downhill? Huh? Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to switch to inflate. Make the mouse a good bit bigger. And we're going to try to avoid getting the cuff or the breeches, not the breeches, the bottom of the kilt. bottom of the tunic inflated. And we're going to try and inflate where it meets. Oh, yeah. Where it meets the top of the boots. Because that's where it would get baggy and start, because it's being tucked in. We're just going to do a vague massing in. There's any number of tools you can use to do this if you are following along. You could do inflate like I'm doing. You could use one of the clay brushes, although those tend to be a bit more weird. The clay brushes, clay buildup. Doesn't look like it's really good, but when you're actually working with it for the majority of your buildup, it ends up looking gets some really interesting effects. For example, you can get some really good wood effects with that, or stone effects. And we're going to smooth this out, and smooth this out. Okay. And smooth out down here. And smooth out down here. Then we're going to shrink the mouse a bit, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the gravity wrinkles. Make it a little bit more intense. Start with the gravity wrinkles around bottom, and then come up from there. Then we're going to break open the slash tool. It should be add 6, and we're going to draw on the bottom of the wrinkles. Bottom about a third of the way down each wrinkle. In this case, this area here, we're actually going to start coming back up because it's changing. The wrinkles are changing direction there. We're going to hit this area and down here with the smooth, and we're also going to hit this with the smooth. We're going to come down there, and then come around here, and like that. We're going to hit some of these areas with the smooth because I forgot to when I was making it. But you want to smooth just above some of these wrinkles. And in most cases, you want to smooth the ends of the wrinkles, even if it's just a little bit. Okay, let's move this back over. Smooth there. And this is going to come down to here, but it's also coming from here to the same spot. It's very frequent for zigzag, for wrinkles to zigzag. Okay. Now we notice that this one is then going to come back up this way and from down here. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to switch to subtract, increase it from 6 to 10, and we're going to go under some of the bigger wrinkles. and smooth it at the ends. There we go. Now, the reason we have both a peak and a groove in each of these wrinkles is the different kinds of painting techniques have different effects, whether it's a groove or a peak, so to speak. And as such, we want it to kind of have both behaviors, because there's a darker in between underneath and there's a lighter up above. Okay, now we frame it, and the pants are nice and baggy. Yay! I Dungeon Master on Saturdays. I play on Wednesdays. Now, the next thing is the tunic. We give a little bit on the upper, but we want kind of a little bit more on the lower because, well, it's loose down below. Now, I'm going to smooth it all, because that's significantly heavy bags. That's far more than I expected to give. Okay. Go. Just smooth out up here. And okay, and then okay, there we go. Now we're going to go back to slash, back to add, drop it back to 6, and once again just kind of draw the bottom across the bottom third, just below the highlight if you've got a rather shiny matte cap set as default. I personally am not a huge fan of the red wax. That's the default for ZBrush. So I switched it for another one that I got online. It makes it easier on sculpting because you can see all of your details better with the shadow and the underlight. And then around, come around here, come down this way and up, and then come down this way and up, and here. Move, loop around, and come under here. Then once again we hit subtract and set it to 10. We're going to go just lightly under there, under there. Yes, I do recommend a graphics tablet like a Wacom when doing something like this, because Wacoms, the difference between using a Wacom and a mouse when sculpting is like the difference between using an airbrush and a rattle can when painting. You can do some amazing things with either one, but it takes so much more work with the rattle can. Okay, that's the bottom of the tunic. Now we work on the top of the tunic, and one thing we're going to do is we're going to hide the hands and the upper arms so that we can get to everywhere we need to be. Without getting too much in the way, but apparently there's little fragments that sometimes self-group, usually ones that are related to seams from... There we go. Now we can get to our upper torso, and one thing we're going to do here, we're going to make the mouse a little bit bigger. We're going to start and move up. What these are is these are compression wrinkles. There. Then we're going back to slash with the subtract, and we're going to go... Actually, we're going to make it more intense and go in down the center and up of each of these. And smooth out the top. We're going to bring back the rest of this because we're going to need it to make sure we don't create any warps. Then we're going back to add, we're shrinking it to 8, and we're shrinking the mouse size. And what we're going to do, we're going to just kind of very faintly sharpen the bottom of these wrinkles. Okay. We can now hide the belt. We don't need to see this anymore because we're not working with it. Instead, what we're going to do, we're going to smooth out a little bit across the top here. And we're going to hit 1 a couple times to make it a bit more emphatic. And the same thing is going here. And there we go. Now with slash on, we're going to increase the intensity to 10. And we're going to start drawing in the wrinkles for the bent joints. And then just a little bit under here, because we do have some joint bends coming from that half bent arm. I'm going to smooth that one out. And frame out. And just to see what he looks like right now, let's go ahead and turn all the rest of it on. Well, everything except the cloak. We zoom out. And even that tiny, those wrinkles are looking nice. So, frame. The next thing that we really need to do is the knuckles. It doesn't need a lot since the hands aren't fully bent, but it does need something on these knuckles. So we make sure that the mouse is about as wide as the hands, so that'd be about a 14. And we're going to very gently draw on where the knuckles would be, and then draw on the wrinkles from the tendons on the back of the hand. I shouldn't say wrinkles, just the tendons on the back of the hand. Then we're going to just kind of draw on where the knuckles would be. We're not going to mess with smoothing them on this one, because this sucker's got his fingers pretty much already straight as it is. You see how the hand is already looking so much better than the other one? It's looking so much more like a hand. Just because of those little dots and 4 lines. And the same thing here. We're going to draw on our basic wrinkle areas, or basic knuckle areas, and draw on our tendons. And then we're going to draw the knuckles for that same way. We're just gonna gotta remember that the ring has the same height as the index, and the pinky is the smallest of them all. Frame out. And I think what's pretty much left to do now is the cloak. Excuse me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a rather large brush, and we're going to basically be being very vague, because cloaks, pretty much you've got, well, That's way too strong. And then go to slash, go to drop bit intensity a lot. That's too low. Okay. And then we're going to use the move tool, made really big, to move this over to behind and this over to there, and then bring it out, bring this out this way, and bring in the back of it just because it kind of needs it. And then shrink it, pull it out, and push it in. And there. That is our Tubby Bard. We're going to select it, the Tubby Bard loot, and subdivide it a couple times, just to make sure it stays nice and smooth. And then for the base, well, the base we're going to subdivide it one time. Then we're going to merge down a couple times, and we get our final dude. This is our Tubby Bard. And now what we do is we come to geometry and we dynamesh it, because what this will do is this will fuse them all into one surface with an evenly distributed polygon count, so that when we zoom in, we can see that it's all one surface. The fingers are blending in with where they're touching. The cloak is blending in. But when we zoom out, it doesn't look like that. In fact, there's one thing that we're going to do. We're going to go back to slash and subtract, shrink this down. We're going to kind of dig in there just a little bit to emphasize the division there. Now, the problem is this is also now 1.9 million polygons if you look up there. We don't need 1.9 million polygons on our 3D printers, do we? No! So instead what we do is we go to Z plugin, we click it so that it comes over here, and we go to Decimation Master. Most 3D modeling programs have some form of decimation. 3D Studio Max has Pro Optimizer. ZBrush has Decimation Master. There are similar ones. What these things do is they take, when I click this button, it analyzes the mesh. You'll see that as an orange bar goes across and has a percentage. Right now it's at 10, 15, 14, yeah, etc. And that's just plotting out the positions of all the polygons and their relation to each other. It'll then calculate which ones can it drop. For example, If we had 3 polygons set up like this, but they were all in the same plane, we could replace them with a single triangle like that. You know, that kind of thing. How many can they drop? And the end result is, once it hits 100%, it'll then reorder it, and I've told it to be about 100,000 triangles. And the end result is 100,170. And if we look in, we can see that, for example, up in, well, let me shrink this so it's a bit easier to see. Up in this area, the triangles are bigger than down here on the hand. The triangles on the loot with the flat surface are even bigger still, and underneath the base, they're huge. That is our bard. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and get some soda before I do anything else. The results of one of my greatest 3D prints ever. I love this. First, I'm going to go ahead and export this as an object file. And this is simply going to be the Tubby Bard. Later on this afternoon, I am going to be going in and converting it to STL file, and I'm going to send you both the OBJ and STL versions. That'll be after tonight's show, just as an example. And when I do, you and I will be the only ones with that particular set of files until next week. And yes, I am sculpting again at 6. I, once again, am not certain what tonight's going to be. OBJ and STL are both file formats. You know, it's like, what's the difference between a JPEG and a PNG? OBJ is older, and it's aimed more at 3D graphics. It is a text-based format, which means everything's in written out numbers. Like, you have a list of vertexes. Vertex 1 is this coordinate X, this coordinate Y, this coordinate Z, and so on and so forth. Then you have the triangles. Triangle 1 is this is coordinate 1, coordinate 2, coordinate 3, and that, or vertex 1, vertex 2, vertex 3, that defines our triangle. STL is a similar style of format. The difference is OBJ is aimed at 3D graphics, 3D programs like Dev Studio, like going back and forth between different programs. It's also about a 30-year-old format. It was created for Alias Wavefront, which most of you probably don't remember, but it was one of the first big 3D programs for computer for movies and that. STL is specifically formulated for the purposes of 3D printing, rapid prototyping, and that sort of thing. So it doesn't have extraneous aspects like vertex normals, texture coordinates, that sort of thing. Overall, they're about the same in terms of amount of information per kilobyte, but I prefer using OBJ. Some people. Okay, and Good Game Hunters, right now it is this. The place I got it was like Vigilance Vapes or whatever, and if you can add a 100 mil of this 3 Nick for $3 to your order right now. Coincidentally, that's also the bottles that I ended up using for my medium and my thinner, my flow extender, etc., etc. This is not Lamian medium. Lamian medium is overpriced. For 12 ounces, you pay $5. Well, guess what? This is name brand artist matte medium. For $12, I got 237 mils. Almost 20 times as much. This is vegetable glycerin and water. And it makes washes and things like that so much smoother than water alone or water with soap in it. It's 99% of Games Workshop stuff is garbage that they charge too much for. I don't like their paints. Their paint pots are designed to dry out and fail. Golden Matte Medium. You can get it at art supply stores. As you can see down here, it's 8 fluid ounces, 237 milliliters. At my local store, my local art supply store, it was $12 after tax. And any situation you would use Lamian medium, use that instead. And like I said, I put it into its own dropper bottle. This is a 100 ml dropper bottle. This holds roughly 6 times as much as a bottle this size. And this will probably last me good Lord knows how long. Yeah, see, to be totally honest, the difference between, Vallejo and Army Builder, or Army Painter, and almost any of the other paints like that is so minimal. Now, if you get Model Air from Vallejo, they're a lot thinner. It's actually good for making, if you're going to be using it for glazes, get the Model Air version. But when it comes down to it, Army Painter, Vallejo, and Citadel, the paint itself, not the pots, not the overpricedness, the actual quality of utilizing the paint is up to personal opinion. They are leagues better than Apple Barrel or poster paint. I actually know someone that would paint their miniatures with poster paint. Anyway, it's 2:57. It's 3 minutes until 3. I want to get a little bit of napping in before the next show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up my hand as usual. I'm going to count down from 5 to 1. I'm going to recommend that you hit the like and subscribe button and the little bell icon. Yeah. And then I'm going to go ahead and log out, and then at 6 p.m. tonight, that's in just right around 3 hours from now for anyone who's not in Central U.S. time zone, I'm going to have another Patreon Sculpt happen for about 2 hours, 2 to 2.5. So, I'm going to go ahead and start counting. That is a 5. That is a 4. That is a 3. That is a 2. And that is a 1 as we wait on YouTube lag.